So this week's tutorial is going to be a very practical based tutorial straight into Ableton that's going to show you as a beginner how you can start making house, tech house, even techno style drums. I'm going to show you that in Ableton with not much talking, just going to dive straight into it. How's it going, guys? It's John Holt here with The Audio Journey, helping make music production accessible to all. And here on this channel, what I do is a variety of music production tutorials, mainly focused towards beginners and beyond. So if that's something you might be interested in, then definitely consider subscribing. So let's jump straight into Ableton. I'm going to show you how I would build up some house drums as a complete beginner. So first thing I've done, I'll delete this so I can show you from the start, make a MIDI track. This is what you see when you first open up Ableton Live. So the first thing you're going to do is come over to this drums section up here. And for house, tech house, the kind of kits you want to be using, probably a 909. Used on countless house records, that's going to be a really good one to start with. 707's not a bad one to go for. 808's more kind of hip hop, but yeah, we'll start off with a 909. Just drag that, click and drag onto a MIDI track. I forgot to mention as well, you can do this in any version of Ableton, all the way from Lite up to Suite, so there's no restriction here, you can jump in and get started. So, once we've got this kit core 909 on this MIDI track, you'll see that down here, we can actually listen to the drums. I'm gonna turn that down, sorry if that was a bit loud. So we can hear that we've got each separate drum sound on each one of these pads. Now what we want to do is make these into a drum pattern so that they actually sound like a drum beat that you would hear in a house track. So first thing we're going to do is come up and double click here, and this makes a MIDI clip. Now I go into more detail about this in some of my other videos that give you an understanding of what everything in here does, and I'll link something up on the card for you that will help you go through that if you want to check that out at the end of the video. But for now, we've made a MIDI clip. I'm going to bring this up a bit by hovering over here and bringing that up. And right down at the bottom, you can see we've got, along the side here, we've got all of the drums' names. Now, you might not know what they are to start with, that's absolutely fine. All you need to do is click on this little headphone button so it turns blue, and then you can hear all of the drums here. So what I'm going to do is show you how I would build up a really basic house beat that follows a pretty universal structure that's obviously strayed from time to time, but this is your bread and butter kind of house beat. You're going to start off with a 4 to the floor kick drum. So the kick drum is this low one just down here. And what we're going to do is put one just there. Cool. So let's listen to that. The kind of tempo that you want for house is about 120 to start with. That's pretty good. I tend to like it at about 124, so we'll pop it there. And then we'll play this MIDI clip. Cool, so that's what we're starting with, just a straight kick drum, and the reason it's called 4 to the floor, it's because it's on every fourth note or every quarter note. Let's then go in and add the next thing, which would be a clap. So the typical house pattern tends to have a clap here and here, so let's listen to that. The next thing is going to be either a closed or an open hi-hat. Let's go with that one, and these will go here. Now, the reason that I know that is because I've done it hundreds and hundreds of times. This is going to be a pattern that you probably recognize the sound of, and once you've done it 5 times or so, it will just become something that you can do in your sleep, so don't worry about that. You will definitely get used to it, and it's the variation to this that actually makes you sort of stand out in terms of making it a good pattern. So let's have a listen to this. There we go. A very, very simple house sort of beat. You'll find with every genre of music, drum and bass, techno, dubstep, there's generally like a typical drum pattern, the bare bones that a genre will follow, and this is it for house and sort of techno. So that's a really good thing to memorize. Have a go just putting that in a few times, and at the end of the video I'm going to show you a free resource that actually teaches you this kind of stuff, which is free, that you don't need to use Ableton with, but we'll dive in here. and I'll show you a couple of bits that I would then add to make this sound a little bit more professional. So something that I like to add is something that I call underhats, which is some quicker hi-hats that sit at a lower volume that just sort of add to it and add a little bit of groove in there. So what I'll do this with is this hi-hat just here, and we can see down on the bottom right hand corner here, we can see that the grid is 16th notes. Now you can right click and change that, but I'm going to leave it as 16th notes for now. I've just pressed B for Bravo on my keyboard to get the pencil tool. You'll see that my cursor is changing to a pencil. You can also click that just up here in the right hand corner. So I'm going to draw in 16th note hi-hats because that's exactly what I want, and I'll show you why that is in a second. So let me play that for you and you'll see why we'll want to turn them down. So they're a little bit loud for my liking there. As I said, I generally like to turn these down a little bit. So I'll explain that just a little bit more. So this little button up here opens up each different channel of the drum rack. So if we come back down to here, this is the device view and this is the clip view. So the clip is this that we made just at the start. The device that we're using is the drum rack. So you switch between those two views here. And in the device, we can see that we've got all these different drum hits, which we are using in the clip mode. And if you open up this section here, you can adjust the volumes, mute and solo things and the pan, and basically have a lot more individual control over the things that you've got in your drum rack. So for instance, I want to turn down this hi-hat here, so we can see that fader going, pointing at the screen like you're going to see that. We've got the fader going here, which means that we know it's that one. I'm going to turn it down and have a play with that. Now, here's a common problem. You might be able to hear a little click, which sounds kind of unpleasant. I'm going to explain what that is and how to fix that. So the reason that's happening is Ableton basically set these drum racks up so that it couldn't have an octopus playing them. There's only a certain amount of cymbals or drums that you could be hitting at one time when you're playing an actual drum kit, and that's what they try and make in here. And the thing that they use to do that is called choking. So where you see choke here, we want these to say none. And there are really good sort of creative uses for that. But for now, we're just going to leave them off so that we don't get that annoying click. So if we play that now, we don't hear that click. There we go. So we've got those low-level underhats, and they don't sound very loud on their own, but when I take them away, you definitely notice the difference. Cool, so that's definitely something to bear in mind there. Now, one of the next things that I would do to start making some different variations of this drum pattern, because we don't want just the same drums going throughout the whole song, it's going to sound a little bit boring. So one of the next things that I would do is basically copy and paste this MIDI clip and then change a couple of things inside the clip. So first of all, what I'm going to do is click, oops, I just double clicked, which makes a new note. So single click down in this MIDI section just here, and then hit Command or Control A. And what that's going to do is select all of those notes. Another thing that you can do is just click and drag right all the way across and hit Command and D or Control D. And what that's going to do is duplicate the pattern out. And then I'm going to come up to just here, hover over this, and drag it out, so that we've got a bit of a longer drum pattern. And we're going to drag that out to 3. So that means that this is the start of bar 3. So this means we've got a 2-bar drum loop. Now, what it'd be really handy to know now is how to zoom. Either the plus and minus button, and the minus button works without holding anything down to zoom out, but you hold shift and press plus button, at least on Mac. I can't remember how that works on Windows. But yeah, plus plus and minus for zooming in and out, or just down here, you can click and drag up and down to zoom in or out. So here we've got a drum pattern, and you can see the line going through that, and you'll hear how long it is. Cool, so we've got a 2-bar drum pattern just here. So what I'm gonna do is click on this MIDI clip now, and again, hit Command D, and what that's gonna do is make a new MIDI clip just below it. And what I'm gonna do is click on this new MIDI clip now. We're now editing this second MIDI clip, and I'm gonna add some other bits in. So just gonna sort of jazz it up a bit, make it a little bit more interesting. By adding some snares, some rim shots, maybe a second hat, an extra clap somewhere. So with this kind of thing, just throw spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks, especially when you're starting out. Just throw stuff at the wall, and there are so many happy accidents that are going to happen with MIDI that you throw something somewhere completely randomly and you're like, that sounds really cool actually. So that's what I would encourage you to do at this point. Have a go with it. I'm going to chuck some stuff in here and see what sounds good, and let's see how that goes. Put a snare in there. Nope, there. Cool. So adding little bits of variation like that is how you're going to build up drum patterns. This is still incredibly basic, and it's still not at the standard that you'd probably hear in a tech house track or a house track. This is just to give you an idea of what it's like to add little bits of percussion and other elements into your drum patterns to make them a little bit more interesting. So let's listen to the difference between the first one, which is the bare bones, just house track, and then the bottom one, which has got those extra bits of percussion in. New one. Turn those down a bit, so rim shot. Turn that down, and the snare as well. Cool. The next thing I would do is think about different parts of the song. So there's maybe going to be a section of the song that's got the most energy, everything's in, all the vocals, and you need the drums to sort of pick it up a little bit. One thing I like to do in that instance is add a ride in, which is a different symbol, which is this one. I have adjusted that very slightly by clicking on the ride and increasing the attack, and I'll show you why. So that's it without. You can hear it's like someone hitting a ride cymbal. Let's hit duplicate again. I'll name this one, Control R, and rename this. So I'm going to do basic, perk for percussion, and then ride. Cool. So to switch between the device view and the clip view, which is these two different views here, you can hold Shift and Tab, and that's on Mac and PC. Handy shortcut. So let's go ahead and start adding this ride in. I'm going to do it at the same in the same place that these hi-hats would be. So instead of having to draw it out again, what you can do is to select all of the hi-hats in there. You can click on here, and that selects them all, which is really handy. You can see that they've turned blue, which means that they're selected. Now, one of the most handy shortcuts that I found on Ableton is if you hold down Option or Alt, I think it's Alt on a PC, hold that down. which I'm holding down now, and then click and drag something, this applies pretty much across the board, it's going to duplicate it. So I'm holding down Alt, click and drag these up to the ride section and let go. And you can see that that's copied them as opposed to just moving them. So if I don't hold Alt and I just move these, it's now moved them away from there. So Command or Control Z to undo. And let's now have a listen to that. First off, the ride is quite loud. Let's turn that down a little bit in here. And what I did is I increased the attack. So it basically just adds a little bit of a fade in so that I don't get that stick sound right at the start of the ride. So the way to do that, again, you come onto the device view, click on the ride and just increase the attack. Let's turn that down a bit. So you can imagine this is like the climax of your song. Everything's in, the bass is in, all the vocals, all the synthy bits. It's all going really quite nicely. Listen to the difference between this ride section and the perk pattern that we've got. So you're going to hear, I'll play the perk one first, and then I'll play the ride one, and you'll feel just a bit of a lift in the energy. The ride. Maybe turn that on. So in the context of a track, it's going to make a lot more sense, but they're just little variations that you can add to spice up your drums a little bit. The last thing I'll show you is if, say we were going into a breakdown and you wanted to take out the kick drum, for example, which is common in breakdowns. We could copy this down again, so we'd probably duplicate this percussion one, and just as we did with the MIDI notes, we can hold down Alt and drag one of these MIDI clips down onto a new section. So hold down Alt, drag this down, and you can see the little plus symbol there on the cursor. Let go, and we've duplicated that, which is cool. So we'll name this break and go into the MIDI clip. That was just Shift and Tab for that shortcut. Again, to select all of the kick drums, we can just click on the kick here and press backspace. And then, so we were going from this section here. This is like a build up, the bit where DJs will mix the track in. And then we come into a breakdown. There we go. That'll all build up and snare roll and stuff, and then it'll drop back in. Cool. So I'll stress this is incredibly simple stuff. House drums 101. And then the way that you would get these across is you can simply copy and paste them. So say we were starting off with the perk one. We do copy, and then you press Tab to come into the second view, which is the arrangement view, and then hit Command or Control V, and then Command and Control D is going to duplicate that out. So we've got just a starting thing here. If you want to join all of these together so that you can move them all at once, you can hit Command J. But we're not going to go too much further than that in this tutorial. As I said at the start of the video, I've got some videos which are mainly focused on helping you navigate Ableton. So if you don't understand like the difference between these two views, how you get stuff from one side to the other, what the point of the two views is, and then just the other stuff like the faders and stuff that you need to know really to start using Ableton, I'm going to link up a video, as I say, on the card and in the description below that I really think you should go through and have a look at. It's all completely free series of videos and a free ebook. So go and have a look through that. If you really want to dig into Ableton and start learning it properly, I'd say it's going to be one of your best places to start. It's just going to break everything down with no jargon for you. This tutorial has been quite fast paced in terms of if you haven't used Ableton before. So if that was a bit of a struggle, head over and watch that video series, and hopefully this will all make a bit more sense and we can start building on that in the future. I've been John Holt with The Audio Journey. I really hope to see you guys again soon. Take care.